There's a particular type of man who creates tension in rooms without uttering a single provocative word. He's not hostile, confrontational, or deliberately offensive. He simply occupies his own mental space, attending to his own concerns. Yet somehow, his mere existence seems to agitate certain individuals in ways that defy rational explanation. It's not about his words or actions. He's often barely engaged with whatever's unfolding around him. But that's precisely what disturbs others. His emotional distance, his composure, his unwillingness to participate in unspoken social theatrics generates a palpable friction that people sense but struggle to articulate. These are men who navigate social environments without adhering to conventional protocols, and somehow that simple act of authentic self-expression triggers reactions they never intended to provoke. What makes this phenomenon even more intriguing is that these men typically have no awareness of the effect they're producing. While others are becoming visibly agitated or unsettled, these individuals are simply following their own internal compass. They're not attempting to antagonize anyone, they're just refusing to prioritize pleasing anyone. Today, I'm dissecting 8 specific ways authentically independent men trigger people simply by existing, and what these reactions reveal about those doing the reacting. Let's explore. Trigger 1. They treat status as invisible. Social hierarchies survive only when everyone acknowledges their existence. The executive enters and the atmosphere shifts. The celebrity appears and behavior adjusts. The wealthy speak and others listen with heightened attention. These invisible protocols maintain structures that make some feel superior and others feel subordinate. Authentically independent men disregard these protocols entirely, not from defiance or disrespect, but because they fundamentally don't process social rank like most people. They perceive a CEO as simply another individual with a different job function. A famous person is just someone more widely recognized. Wealth is merely a numerical value that doesn't alter someone's fundamental character. This creates profoundly awkward moments for those accustomed to special treatment. They anticipate deference, carefully chosen language, obvious acknowledgement of their elevated position. Instead, they receive ordinary conversation. The independent man addresses them identically to how he'd address anyone else. Direct, honest, unbothered by their status. Observing this dynamic is fascinating. You can witness the status-conscious individual waiting for conventional respect markers. Perhaps they drop hints about their importance, anticipating others to react with appropriate awe. But the independent man simply continues treating them like any other human being. No special tone, no excessive politeness, no performance of being impressed. For individuals whose entire identity is constructed around receiving special treatment, this equal treatment registers as an insult. They've invested years building reputations, accumulating status symbols, ascending hierarchies, and here's someone who doesn't seem to notice or care about any of it. That invalidation of their achieved status triggers something defensive within them. The fascinating element is that these men aren't attempting to make a political statement. They're not purposefully disrespecting authority or status. They genuinely evaluate people based on character, competence, and how those individuals treat others, not based on titles, positions, or social rank. And in a society where countless people have constructed their entire self-worth on external validation of their importance, that authentic disinterest in status feels threatening. Trigger 2. Their unwavering gaze creates self-consciousness. Eye contact is intricate social territory. Too little suggests weakness or dishonesty. Too much suggests aggression or impropriety. Most people have calibrated the socially acceptable sweet spot, enough to appear engaged, but not so much that it becomes uncomfortable. Authentically independent men often violate this unwritten protocol without intention. When they're listening or observing, they maintain steady eye contact that exceeds the comfortable social threshold. Not from aggression or dominant strategies, but because they're genuinely paying attention. They're not performing engagement, they're actually engaged. This creates an unsettling effect on individuals unaccustomed to being truly seen. Most social eye contact is performative. We look sufficiently to appear courteous, but we're not really perceiving the other person. We're formulating our response, managing our own presentation, or simply executing social motions. But when an independent man looks at you, there's a quality that feels distinctly different. He's not looking through you or past you. He's actually observing, absorbing information, noticing details. And people can sense that difference even if they can't articulate it. This triggers profound self-consciousness in others. They begin wondering what he's perceiving, what he's thinking, what he's noticed that they weren't aware they were revealing. That direct gaze becomes a mirror reflecting back their own insecurities. They assume he's judging them when he's simply paying attention. For individuals accustomed to hiding behind social masks, this level of observation feels invasive. They're used to their performance being accepted at face value. But that steady gaze suggests someone is perceiving past the performance to what lies beneath. And whether that's actually occurring or not, the possibility that it might be happening is sufficient to generate deep discomfort. The intriguing element is how this manifests in confrontations. Most people drop eye contact when tension escalates, either from discomfort or as a signal of backing down. But independent men maintain that steady gaze throughout, not from dominance games, but because they're not intimidated by confrontation. That unwavering eye contact often resolves disputes before they fully develop, because the other person interprets it as supreme confidence, even when it's just natural comfort with direct interaction.
Trigger number 3. Their self-sufficiency exposes others' dependence. Humans are fundamentally social creatures. Most people are wired to need others for validation, connection, support, and identity. This need creates natural leverage points. You can influence someone by threatening their belonging. You can control someone by managing their access to the group. Social bonds become invisible restraints. Authentically independent men function differently, not because they're antisocial or don't value genuine connection, but because they don't need people in the way most do. Their sense of self isn't tethered to group belonging. Their decisions aren't influenced by fear of social rejection. Their contentment doesn't depend on constant interaction. This fundamental self-sufficiency triggers others because it can't be weaponized. You can't threaten to exclude someone who doesn't require inclusion. You can't manipulate someone with social pressure if they're genuinely comfortable being on the periphery. You can't make them fear isolation if they already prefer solitude to poor company. Consider how most social control operates. Someone steps out of line and the group withdraws, sending a clear message about acceptable behavior. Most people feel that withdrawal immediately and adjust to regain acceptance, but when an independent man doesn't notice or doesn't care about that withdrawal, the punishment has no effect. And if punishment doesn't work, the group has lost its primary tool for maintaining conformity. This self-sufficiency manifests in small moments. Everyone's attending an event they don't actually want to attend, pressuring each other through guilt and obligation. The independent man simply doesn't go. No elaborate excuse, no apology. He simply chooses not to participate. While others are there out of social obligation, suffering through something they despise, they resent him for possessing the freedom they wish they had. The deepest trigger comes from what this independence reveals. When someone is genuinely content alone, it holds up a mirror to everyone who isn't. It exposes the difference between choosing solitude and fearing it. And for individuals who've built their entire social strategy around belonging, watching someone thrive outside the structure they depend on feels like a personal judgment, even when no judgment is being made. Trigger number 4. They keep their plans internal. Most people telegraph their moves well before executing them. They hint at plans, drop clues about their thinking, signal intentions through small actions that preview larger ones. This transparency makes them predictable. Others can anticipate what's coming and prepare responses accordingly. Authentically independent men keep their plans internal until execution, not from secrecy or distrust, but because announcing intentions creates problems they'd rather avoid. People offer unsolicited opinions, they create obstacles based on assumptions, they prepare counter moves to plans that might change before implementation.
The independent man views all this noise as unnecessary interference. This information control makes others profoundly uncomfortable because humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We feel safer when we can predict what others will do, but when someone's next move is unknown, that unpredictability registers as potential threat, not because they're dangerous, but because they're unreadable. Observe what happens when someone asks an independent man about his plans. Most people will share details seeking validation or input. The independent man might give a vague answer or simply deflect the question entirely. He's not being secretive, he just doesn't see the benefit in explaining himself before the plan is complete. And that withholding of information bothers people who feel entitled to know what others are thinking or doing. This trait becomes especially triggering in social circles where gossip and information sharing are the currency of connection. Everyone's updating each other on their lives, their plans, their problems, but the independent man shares nothing of substance. He'll participate in surface conversations, but reveals very little about what matters to him. This makes him an outsider by default because he won't trade personal information for social belonging. For manipulative individuals, this is a nightmare scenario. They rely on knowing people's plans to position themselves advantageously. But when someone won't reveal intentions, won't signal moves, won't provide any preview of their thinking, there's nothing to manipulate. The game can't be played if one person won't show their cards until the hand is already over.
Trigger number 5. They don't validate competitive frameworks. Competition is pervasive. Who has the superior career, the more impressive vehicle, the more notable achievements, the higher status? Most people are constantly measuring themselves against others, finding their position in invisible rankings that determine how they feel about themselves. Authentically independent men opt out of this entire system, not because they couldn't compete, but because they genuinely don't care about winning contests they never entered. Their goals are personal, not comparative. Their success is measured against their own standards, not against what others have achieved. This non-participation drives competitive individuals absolutely insane. They need others to compete with them because competition validates their achievements. Winning only feels satisfying if someone else loses, but when someone isn't playing the game at all, their victory feels hollow. You can observe this frustration in action. Someone brags about an accomplishment, clearly positioning it as superior to others. Most people will either compete back with their own achievement or concede the win through their reaction. But an independent man might just say, "That's good," with no emotional weight behind it, and move on. No envy, no desire to compete, just genuine indifference to the contest. This triggers the competitive person because it invalidates their framework for measuring worth. They've invested their identity in being superior to others. But if someone doesn't care about the comparison, doesn't acknowledge the hierarchy, doesn't participate in the ranking system, then their position in that hierarchy becomes meaningless. The deepest frustration emerges when they realize they can't provoke competition. They might try to challenge the independent man directly, setting up obvious comparisons or competitions, but he simply won't engage. Not from fear of losing, but from complete disinterest in proving anything to anyone. His confidence doesn't come from being superior to others. It comes from being satisfied with himself. And that internal validation is immune to external competition. Trigger number 6. Their patience neutralizes manipulation. Most people operate on immediate feedback loops. Push someone's buttons and they react now. Create drama and they respond now. Apply pressure and they break now. This predictability gives others a sense of control. They know what input creates what output. It's simple cause and effect. But authentically independent men don't function on immediate timelines. Someone attempts to provoke them and nothing happens. They wait. Someone creates urgency and they remain composed. They evaluate at their own pace, make decisions when they're ready, and refuse to be rushed by external pressure. This delay between action and response drives control-oriented people absolutely insane. They're accustomed to seeing immediate results from their manipulation tactics. When those tactics land in silence and patience instead, they lose their primary tool for influencing behavior. You can observe this play out in negotiations. Most people become uncomfortable with silence and feel pressured to fill it, often making concessions just to end the tension.
But an independent man will sit in that silence comfortably, waiting for the other party to reveal more information, get nervous, or make the first move. His patience isn't a tactic, it's just how he operates. He's fine with things taking as long as they take. This patience extends to conflicts as well. Someone initiates drama expecting an immediate emotional reaction, but instead of engaging, the independent man simply continues his day normally. Days pass, perhaps weeks. The drama seeker grows more frustrated because their attack landed nowhere. They escalate, trying to force a response. Still nothing. Eventually, they're the only ones still agitated about something the independent man processed and dismissed days ago. What makes this particularly maddening for others is that they can't determine if he's unbothered or strategizing. Is he above the situation or playing a longer game? The uncertainty consumes them. Because when you can't control someone's timeline, you can't control their decisions. And losing that lever of control makes people feel powerless in ways that genuinely frighten them. Trigger number 7. They refuse to mirror emotional intensity. Social interactions typically follow a matching pattern. Someone raises their voice, you raise yours. Someone gets excited, you match their enthusiasm. Someone brings intensity, you meet it with equal intensity. This mirroring creates a synchronization that makes interactions feel normal. But authentically independent men don't mirror energy automatically. When someone approaches them with aggression, they stay calm. When someone attempts to create urgency, they remain steady. When someone projects anxiety, they maintain their equilibrium. This refusal to match energy disrupts the expected choreography of social interaction. This creates an incredibly frustrating experience for people attempting to provoke reactions. They're projecting energy at someone expecting it to bounce back amplified. Instead, it just gets absorbed and neutralized, like throwing a ball at a wall and having it disappear instead of bouncing back. Someone attempts to initiate an argument, raising their voice, making accusations, clearly attempting to escalate into a fight. Most people would either match that energy and fight back or shrink from it in fear. But an independent man just maintains his calm tone, addresses points logically if they're worth addressing, and refuses to get pulled into the emotional chaos the other person is creating. This non-reaction feels like rejection to the person trying to provoke them. They wanted engagement, even negative engagement. They wanted to matter enough to generate a strong reaction. But getting nothing but calm responses makes them feel invisible. And often that feeling makes them escalate even more, trying desperately to obtain the emotional response they're seeking. What they don't understand is that the independent man isn't suppressing emotion to win some kind of battle. He's genuinely not affected by their performance. His emotional state is internally regulated, not externally triggered. So their attempts to push his buttons land on nothing because those buttons simply don't exist in the places others expect them to be. Trigger number 8. They don't fake admiration. Most interactions operate on a simple exchange. Someone displays something, a possession, an achievement, or a connection, and others respond with the appropriate level of admiration. It's an unspoken agreement that maintains social harmony. You validate me, I validate you. Everyone feels satisfied. But authentically independent men don't participate in this exchange. Not from arrogance or spite, they simply respond genuinely to what they observe. If something actually impresses them, they might acknowledge it, but if it doesn't, they won't fabricate a reaction just to make someone feel better. Someone arrives in an expensive vehicle and waits for the usual compliments. Most people deliver on cue, playing their part in the social script. But when an independent man barely glances at it and continues the conversation like nothing happened, the display falls flat. The person showing off expected a reaction, validation, envy, surprise, and received nothing. That void where the expected response should be creates immediate discomfort. This occurs constantly in professional environments. A colleague makes a significant announcement about their promotion or achievement, clearly fishing for praise and attention. While everyone else rushes to offer congratulations and ask questions, the independent man might just nod once and return to his work. He's not being rude, he's just not performing interest he doesn't feel. What people don't understand is that genuine indifference isn't the same as jealousy masked as indifference. When someone's actually jealous, you can sense it beneath their words. But an independent man's lack of reaction originates from an entirely different place. He's evaluating whether something matters to him personally, not whether it's objectively impressive. And if it doesn't affect his life, his goals, or his interests, his reaction will be minimal, regardless of how much someone else values it. This selective attention drives certain individuals crazy because they're accustomed to their displays generating automatic responses. They've built their confidence on collecting reactions. But when someone doesn't provide them the validation they're seeking, it forces them to question whether the thing they're displaying actually possesses the value they thought it did. And that uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable. Authentically independent men never set out to trigger anyone. They simply follow their own internal standards and refuse to perform for external validation. In a world constructed on carefully managed images and constant social performance, that level of authentic self-expression can fundamentally unsettle people. It exposes the invisible agreements most people unknowingly participate in, the unspoken contracts that trade genuine self-expression for social acceptance. What makes these reactions so revealing is that they're rarely about the independent man himself. They're about what his authentic existence forces others to confront within themselves. Their own dependence on external validation, their own participation in social games they claim to dislike, their own inability to exist comfortably outside the structures they've built their identities upon. The tension these men create isn't intentional provocation. It's the natural friction that occurs when someone living authentically encounters systems designed to maintain conformity. Their mere presence asks uncomfortable questions without saying a word. Why do you need others' approval? Why are you competing in games that don't fulfill you? Why have you outsourced your self-worth to people who don't actually know you? These aren't easy questions to face, and rather than confronting them internally, most people project that discomfort outward, blaming the independent man for making them feel what they'd rather not feel. But here's the deeper truth. That discomfort is actually valuable information. It's pointing toward the gap between who people are and who they're pretending to be. It's highlighting the places where they've compromised their authenticity for acceptance. It's revealing the invisible chains they've wrapped around themselves while calling it fitting in. The independent man isn't creating that discomfort. He's simply not participating in the collective agreement to ignore it. And ultimately, that's what makes him so triggering. He's living proof that another way is possible, that you can exist without constant validation, that you can make decisions without group consensus, that you can build a life based on internal standards rather than external approval. His quiet confidence doesn't come from superiority. It comes from self-possession. And in a world where most people have lost touch with that quality, witnessing it in someone else can feel either inspiring or threatening, depending on how honest you're willing to be with yourself. The question isn't why these men trigger others. The question is, what does that triggered reaction reveal about the person experiencing it? That's where the real insight lives.